Hispanic Lifestyle is pleased to have the support of Wells Fargo Bank. For more information, visit their website at wellsfargo.com. With roughly 60 million Latinos in the U.S., we highlight Latinas of influence, businesses surviving to thrive. We talk culture, travel, health, wellness, music, entertainment, and of course, food. Our passion is to share inspiring stories with the community. I'm Richard Sandoval, and this is Hispanic Lifestyle.
My name is Lucy Santana, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Girls Inc. of Orange County, which is a local nonprofit organization. We're affiliated with a national organization, and we inspire girls to be strong, smart, and bold. And my role is to oversee the day-to-day of ensuring that we're doing programs for girls that help them to be empowered to make good decisions.
You know, a few years back, I believe it was 2014, you were a Hispanic Lifestyle Latina of influence. And of course, you're still a Latina of influence. It's, it doesn't go away. But when putting together our program for BizCon 2021, I was, and coming out of the pandemic, I was thinking, who do I know in the nonprofit sector? That's why you came to mind. So Lucy, tell me how you've been doing since all this.
Surviving, but thanks for inviting me and thanks for thinking of me. And so surviving the pandemic, I think as a nonprofit organization where our program typically runs in partnership with school districts, as you can imagine, in March of 2020, when school districts sent all their students home, we were sent home too, pretty much. We really had to take a step back and say, how are we going to do our work? How are we going to coexist? Because we know that the girls that we serve, traditionally ages 5 to 18, and traditionally girls that need the additional support services to just get through the day-to-day are still going to need us, whether they're at home or they're doing virtual online schooling. So it took my team and I maybe about a week to really think through how we're going to reach them. So we did the traditional pick up the phone, call them, do text messages, do email. And during that time, as we were just trying to reach out to them and say, Girls Inc. is going to be here. Just give us a minute, give us some time to really kind of reflect on how we're going to do the proverbial pivot, right? What everybody was talking about, how are we going to pivot? We started thinking about how do we bring our programs online? Our programs are typically all about the connection, the connectivity to our staff and to the girls that we're serving, regardless of the age. The other piece was our programming was all about hands-on, experiential kind of programs. So whether we were talking about a confidence building program, a college readiness program, a workforce development program, or when we're working with the little ones on early literacy, science, technology, engineering, or math, we needed to figure it out how we were going to do this. So super excited that one of my team members, our chief program officer, in her background in her previous job, she'd run online college programming. So this was the time to use her skill set. And we'd already talked about when we get to that point, right? And I think that's what we've all talked about, is that we all sort of knew like someday, there might be flexible work schedules and work from home. Well, we all had to figure it out very quickly, right? And we actually did it. So we purchased an online learning software. We also did YouTube videos immediately, and we figured out which ones of our programs we could do online, and then we took it out to the girls.
Now, with that, what kind of response did you receive? And did people adapt right away?
Well, I will tell you that the first thing we did was try to reach out to the schools, but they were in the same position as we were. They were still trying to figure out what they were going to do, let alone say, yeah, girls, come on, Girls Inc., come on board and come along beside us. So what we basically said is, hey, when you're all ready to figure out how we can maybe be a resource to you, because we don't want to get in your way. We do know that the girls need their academics, but just know that we're going to be here to partner with you. So what we did is, the first thing we did, as I mentioned, was our YouTube channels. Our staff just started creating YouTube videos that were more of a conversation, and that brought the girls along with whatever particular subject it was going to be. And sometimes it was really just something that could be more light and a little bit more fun. And sometimes there were topics like, hey, today we're going to take a nature walk and we're going to point out the different kinds of plants and how they survive. And so they could do some learning while they were going. The other thing that we started doing right away was doing reading time, just, with the littles. So like the K through third graders, our staff would read a book with a female protagonist because we wanted to make sure that they were learning about positive female role models in the books that we were reading. And the girls would read along with us. And then we would say, hey, what about this character, can you relate to, or what can you not? We did some word sounding if they didn't know how to read. So we were making it interactive in that way so that the girls could go along. But we realized that we needed that connection, that two-way communication. So about 100 YouTube videos later. So if you want to check out our YouTube site, we have many. We ended up doing in this last year, we did online prom, we did online, graduations. We celebrated milestones for these girls. We did a lot of things that were, something that they were all on, right? They were all on a computer anyway. And so they just learned to do that. I think the biggest thing was looking at what we were going to invest our limited resources on. We didn't know what fundraising was going to be like, right? So as a nonprofit, we raise every dollar of our budget every year. So we had to figure out our individual donors going to give, our corporate donors going to give, and our foundations, right? And we typically have a big fundraiser that raised about over $400,000. Well, now you can't get 300 people in a ballroom. So what do you do? So that was the first thing. We postponed our gala that was coming up in June in 2020. And we said, let's figure out how we'll do that later. Let's talk to our corporate donors about how important our programming still is and will they still be able to support us. And so we talked to many, and that was really helpful. And then what we did was we purchased our online system where we were able to do synchronous and asynchronous learning. So the girls had the opportunity to learn from a teacher or an educator, and then they also had modules that they could do on their own. And that's really how we reached them. But it took a lot of phone calls, emails, text messaging. We realized that parents sometimes don't check their emails. And so then we were like, okay, how else can we do this? So then we had to go through the girls. Obviously, reaching girls K through sixth grade was a little bit easier because you still have access to parents that way. But what we found is through text messaging and really just a lot of insistency, we were able to reach those middle and high school girls. And I'm excited to share as we go forward how we actually figured out what were some of our really great strengths and how we were actually able to serve more girls than we ever had in some of our programs.
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you is, number one, funding to keep going and offer the programs and the quality programs that you do, and then capacity. So if you would share to our audience today, maybe some insights of how you addressed, again, I know that they're donations from your funders. I realize that, but they do expect you guys to do certain things.
Right.
And if you would talk about how you satisfied maybe their requirements, and then did you increase capacity?
Great question. So I think the first thing that I'll say is that it's all about relationships. That's one of the key things that we learned immediately. And in fundraising, but I think it's the same thing in business, right? In sales, it's all about the relationship that you have with your customer, your client. And for us, corporation or an individual donor is somebody that we want to create that relationship with. So I looked at our top 50 donors and I just started making phone calls. The interesting thing was that we were all in the same situation, right? Whether they were in the workforce, they had their employees that were staying home and they were trying to figure it out, whether it was an individual donor that is a philanthropist and they had family or they themselves were dealing with that. I think it was really about like, hey, here is what Girls Inc. is doing today. Here is what we're thinking we're going to do in the next 2 or 3 months until we figure this out. And we really need you to continue to support us. Here's the outcomes that we think we'll really still be able to achieve with your support. And now more than ever, this is when we need you. We cannot pull away when the girls are not only now are they going to be out of their element, out of their school environment where there's structure. Now they're going to be at home. Some of them we know are going to be home by themselves. Some of them are not going to have the resources at home to help them. Do they have adequate Wi-Fi? Do they have a computer? Do they have the technology that they need? So we need to do that. And that was what I was really pleased about, was the conversations that were coming up and the questions that were coming up by our donors and funders were, what can we do more for the girls? I mean, they really jumped in and they really embraced this. You know, do we need to buy more computers? Do we need to buy hotspots? You know, what are their schools doing? And I mean, I was also very impressed that schools really were able to step up and to be able to do that for their students. But I think, you know, there was other things that schools couldn't do for them. And we know that when you're working with the most under-resourced population, you've got multiple families living in one unit. You've got multiple kids that are in the same household. And for a parent who may have a lesser than high school education, how are they going to help their kindergartner, their second grader, their seventh grader, or their high schooler? And so we really wanted to be there for them, to be there to be an emotional support, but also to support, you know, just to kind of be their cheerleaders, like, don't give up, keep going. So that's the first thing, that was kind of the way we pivoted and the way that we felt like that's the place that we were going to be able to hold for ourselves. And then having those conversations with the donors of saying, I'm happy to call you in 3 months and let you know what else is happening. And then what was the other part of your question? I forgot.
I wanted to know if you increased
Yes.
capacity. You
Yes.
know, how many young women were you assisting at the beginning and then at the end, if you will?
So pre-COVID in 2019, we served about 4,100 girls. Okay. At the end of 2020, we were like doing the happy dance in December and January of this year. We served 3,500 girls. I think that the fact that we were still able to reach that many girls in a year where we were just not able to go to them and see them in person was really critical. And here's how we did it. What we went through all of our curriculum, all of our programs. We thought about what are all the critical skill sets, life skills that these girls need in every age category that we serve. So maybe the K through 5th grade, the 6th through 8th grade, and then the 9th through 12th grade. And we said, let's bring the strength to our programs. What we also realized is that in so many ways, we were hindered in how many girls we can serve, because when we were school-based, the girls that attended that program, that school, were the only girls that were able to attend that program, right? So if we were only at 5 high schools, only those 5 high schools are being served. So when we started to go digital and virtual, we realized that now we can reach every girl in Orange County and beyond. So that was really where we learned our strength. So we went from serving, here's a good example, in our college readiness program, where we serve girls that are getting ready to, in this case, you know, it was always SAT, ACT prep, and learning about what classes they need to take. We always had an average of about 45 to 50 girls. In 2020, we served 110 girls in that program. And that was because we were able to go virtual. We were able to recruit from every high school, every city. We even had girls from the Inland Empire and LA County, San Diego County saying, hey, can we go to your programs? And we were like, absolutely. You know, we're not going to turn anybody away. We scaled the programming that we were doing. We scaled our staff time. You know, I actually had people that were part-time. We put them to full-time because we needed to do that. So that was really important to us. So that was an example of that. What we also did was I shared a little bit about doing the literacy program with our younger girls and we still wanted to continue to show them about reading and encourage them to read, but we also started incorporating the family. So what we started doing is we're going to do bedtime stories. So from 7 to 7:30 for just a 30-minute Zoom call weekly, we started doing bedtime stories. And what we found is we would have the girl, the brother, the sister, the mom and dad, they'd all like either be on the couch or on a bed, and we would read them a story and they would engage in the conversation. The girls had opportunity to ask questions about the book, and we did too. And this became like a family affair, and it was a weekly activity that these families now were looking forward to participating in.
How cool is that?
What was that?
How cool is that?
Right. I mean, for us, it was like, oh, well, this is something that we know we're going to be able to continue to do now. Like, it's not something we're going to stop. We're not going to stop during the summer. We're going to keep going. And, and now we're last summer, because it was still so new, we only did about 5 summer camps and they were virtual. this summer for 2021, because we're still doing kind of a hybrid model, we're going to have 19 different summer program offerings, some in person, some hybrid, like maybe a couple days a week online, and then like the fourth day in person, because we're still trying to just kind of figure out what's going to be the safest, best way. But that is really what we found, is that having gone virtual, it is allowing us to serve more girls in different communities that didn't know about us. And what we also found is, as concerned as we are that we want to make sure that girls stay connected to us, we also were introduced to a whole lot of other new girls that hadn't reached us before.
You know, being in the nonprofit sector and being responsible for raising money, you and I off camera spoke about meeting new people, new funders, creating new relationships. Have you started to think about that post-pandemic, of how it is you're going to, you're in a growth industry. Have you thought about how it is you're going to operate?
For sure. I think there's some few unknowns, but I think what we do know is the power of relationships. I think the power of networking beyond like who you know, and certainly, going to events was always a helpful way to meet others. I know that I've used LinkedIn a lot more now during this last year to make connections with folks or to reach out to people I didn't know. And I figured, just as I would walk up to a stranger at a mixer, I can send an unsolicited email to somebody, but really, and not in a kind of like stalking kind of way, but, just like, hey, I see that you're in this industry. And really for me, it was really about, we're looking for speakers to come in to talk to girls about a career in X or Y. And I read your profile. I think you'd be great. Now you can do it through Zoom. You don't have to come in. If you're in LA County, you can still come in and meet with the girls and talk to them about this. So I think we are getting a little bit more resourceful in using the technology that maybe was available to us, but maybe we just didn't take the time to learn to what capacity we could use it. I think that's one. I think the other is still I know when I had a couple of conversations with some of our donors and our corporate partners, I said, is there anybody else that you think that you could introduce me to that could be of value to them and to us, and it's only if you're comfortable, but I would put it out there that this is an opportunity for us to kind of grow. And I think, again, it was a little easier to say let's just jump on a quick, Teams chat or a Zoom chat, and I can introduce you to that person. So I have had quite a bit of introductory Zooms or team chats with people that I didn't know before that maybe I would have never made that connection with. And I think, one of the things that I do want to say that you and I chatted about offline too was a big portion of the work that we do is preparing girls for the workforce. And, we had to, relook at our curriculum, right? Because we talked about the power of networking and the strong handshake with the eye contact and all of those things. And those are things that we are continuously learning about, right? And we've been able to continue to plan for that. And I will say that here is something that we hadn't really thought about. Previous to 2020, we had placed maybe about 60, 70 girls in workplace externships where they got to go and interact with people in an office and learn about that industry. 2020, we paused it, but we're back ready to roll. We have over 120 girls in the program right now ready to learn about workforce. And we're going to be placing about 65 girls this summer in virtual workplace externships. And so they're going to be meeting with somebody. Now the work is a little different. So we've decided that, they need the skill sets to learn about project-based learning and how to complete those projects. So we talked with our corporate partners about how do you create an experience for these girls that's still going to be meaningful. And, an Ingram Micro, a Boeing, how do they still learn about engineering? How do they still learn about technology? And these partners have really stepped up to really create a really well-rounded externship for them. But, girls are going to need to learn how to network in different ways as well.
If you would, share with us a final piece of advice that you would give your other colleagues in the industry that are in the nonprofit sector that you feel comfortable sharing.
I think a couple of things. One of the other things that helped us to be successful and to be able to get through some really tough times was that we all have to remember that our nonprofit status is only a tax status. It's not the way that we do business. We are, as CEOs or executive directors, whatever our title is in the nonprofit space, we're still running a business. We still have employees, and we still have to make sure that we're using our money to the best way possible. It is about whether you have, even if you have a small staff, this is why we have board members that we can go out to and be a resource for us. We applied for PPP loan. We learned everything that we could learn about in terms of what would be available for a small business, because sometimes we forget that we are a small business and that we actually do have access to capital and resources in that way. So we were really, we were able to get actually 2 PPP loans. We got one the first year, and then we got the second one this year. We've already had our first one forgiven. We also looked into what are some of the other things. So we learned about the employee retention credit, which has been a lifesaver for us in terms of being able to cover our expenses and salaries. But it is about not giving up. And obviously, we teach our girls about resiliency, but this was an opportunity for us as an organization to learn about resiliency. And I think the biggest learning that I told my staff was we should not be afraid to ask. And sometimes, in the nonprofit space, we always feel like we're asking for money. But this time it was really also about asking for advice, because that was just as valuable than the money that comes in. We always need money. That is just what drives us. But resources on, hey, how do you apply for the PPP loan? Do you know, what are some other ways to do it? And I think the other thing that I will say is that we are, and nonprofits are typically organizations that are human capital, that are run by human capital. And that is really important that we make that connection with our clients, our girls, our constituents of whoever we're serving. And I think that at the end of the day is not forgetting that, and being able to also just think about what they need. But sometimes before you can help others, you have to help yourself. So it's kind of the whole put the air mask on you before you can help others. I think that's one of the things that I also learned is in being able to lead my team. I also needed to be in the right space, right? I needed to mentally be there. And all of us had our home issues to deal with. I had, I had to homeschool somebody while trying to run a nonprofit, with 28 employees and so forth. So I had to care for everybody else. And I think that that's something that sometimes we just go, and we have to remember to take care of ourselves first.
I'm going to ask you, Lucy, do you have any other final thoughts that you would like to share with our friends and colleagues that are tuning in to BizCon 2021?
I think my final thoughts are really about continuing to be, show our own resiliency, show self-care. But I also feel that for us in the nonprofit space, it's really learning new ways to do our business is not a bad thing. I've been with the organization for 22 years, and one of the things that drives me is I don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So every couple of years, it's like, how can I change it up? What can I do different? Because that's going to keep me passionate about our mission of inspiring girls to be strong, smart, and bold. So I really feel like what the pandemic has done for us is really helped us to think beyond today and beyond tomorrow, and to really help us to, how do we plan for things that are just unforeseen, right? We don't ever want to find ourselves in this position again, but so many of us were sort of just circling, right? Because we just really weren't sure. And who knows when we'll really be back to a new normal, but I'm really glad that we're we're heading in that direction, and we just got to hang in there. And I think, situations and events like BizCon where we have the opportunity to learn from each other, I think it's really important. And I hope that, I want to be able to be a resource for anybody else who I can be a resource for.
Well, since you made the offer, do you have a website? How do we follow you? How do we connect with you?
Absolutely. www.girlsinc-oc.org, or I'll even give you my email, lsantana@girlsinc-oc.org, but find me on LinkedIn as well.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon. I really appreciate it, Lucy.
Thank you, Richard.
Didn't get enough? There's always more at HispanicLifestyle.com. And follow us on your favorite social media platform.